Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to call to order this July 2nd, 2025 meeting of the James City County Planning Commission. Ms. Istenis, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Haskins. Dr. Ullman.
Here.
Dr. Ullman represents the Roberts District and is Vice Chair of the Commission. Mr. May.
Here.
Mr. May represents the Powhatan District. Mr. Everson.
Here.
Mr. Everson represents the Stonehouse District. Mr. Rogers.
Here.
Mr. Rogers represents the Berkeley District. Mr. Polster.
Here.
Mr. Polster represents the Jamestown District. And Mr. Haldeman.
Here.
Mr. Haldeman is an at-large member and will be presiding over this meeting as Chair of the Commission. I'm Susan Istenis, Director of Planning, and to my left is Andrew Dean, Deputy County Attorney. We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We now have time for public comment. This is an opportunity for people to address the commission on topics not subject to a public hearing tonight. Limit is for 3 minutes. Please state your name and address. I don't have any speaker cards. Would anybody like to address the commission? Yes, ma'am. Not subject to a public hearing. Okay. Thank you. Reports of the commission, Development Review Committee, Mr. Polster.
The Development Review Committee met at 4 p.m. on 18 June 2025. The committee members present were Jack Haldeman, Steve Rogers, Scott May, and Frank Polster. Staff members present were Tom Leninger, Principal Planner, Hannah Honeycutt, Will Abenston, Planner, Tim Trant, Kaufman and Knowles, Jason Grimes, A&E, Olivia Beck, Sheets Design Team, and Ailey Barkley, Kimley, Horn and Associates. And by the way, we're going to hear this case tonight, which is Subdivision 24-0048, Lovett 64 Commerce Center, Subdivision Exception Request. The applicant was requesting an exception to Section 1954 of the Subdivision Ordinance that require all cul-de-sac streets to be no greater than 1,000 feet. The cul-de-sac's length is measured from the center point of its turnaround along the center line to the right-of-way, to the center line of the right-of-way to the nearest diverging intersection road. The developer would like to construct a single road through the property from Old Stage Road and terminating at the cul-de-sac at Barnes Road. The total length of the road from the entrance at Old Stage for the first phase is approximately 2,395 feet. Once all phases are subdivided out, the final length of the proposed road would be approximately 5,040 feet to the cul-de-sac located near Barnes Road. There was a discussion of why the ordinance required all cul-de-sac streets to be no greater than 1,000 feet. The staff replied that it's primarily an emergency service issue involving the distance to the nearest fire hydrant. The county fire marshal had no objection to the exception request since the master plan has a series of fire hydrants along the 5,040-foot road to the cul-de-sac. The DRC recommended approval of the exception request to the Planning Commission with a vote of 4-0. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Policy Committee, Mr. Everson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Policy Committee met on June 12th. All members of the committee were present with Ms. Allman via Microsoft Teams. Ms. Paris provided the committee with a plethora of information about data centers. With the exception of video provided, the staff report in your packet tonight is a concise synopsis of the information presented. It is noted by Ms. Paris that data centers are currently treated similarly to warehouses. Ms. Paris stated that the staff believes that data centers are an industrial use. There was a discussion regarding the SUP policy guidelines. The committee added 2 additional conditions for SUP, a decommissioning plan and economic returns. The decommission plan is similar to industrial solar facilities, but doesn't include the building, but the components that manipulate data. The economic return is to ensure that our locality benefits directly from data centers, such as local startups and local colleges or research centers. The vast majority of the committee, on a 4-to-1 vote, supported the SUP process for data centers in both M2 and EO to the exclusion of all other zoning districts. Are there any questions?
This also is subject to a public hearing tonight. This is will come up later. Any questions? Thank you very much. With that, we'll come to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are deemed to be non-controversial. However, any commissioner can pull an item for discussion. There are 2 items for consideration. this Development Review Committee action mentioned by Mr. Polster, and minutes to the June 4th, 2025 regular meeting. Would anyone like to pull an item or make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to public hearings. First public hearing is special use permit 25-0004, 4622 Rochambeau Drive, Evolution Group Home. Allison Jacquura, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This presentation might sound a little familiar. As you recall, a couple months ago, a very similar case was brought forward. So Mr. Greg Davis has applied on behalf of Evolution House LLC in order to operate a group home with more than 8 individuals at this 4622 Rochambeau Drive location. You can see it outlined here in red along Rochambeau Drive. The access to the property is actually on this backside from Cloverleaf Lane, which is a frontage road along Interstate 64. The property is zoned A1 General Agriculture. The surrounding properties are as well, and all of this property and the surrounding ones are designated rural lands within the comprehensive plan. It's also located outside of the primary service area. This building previously operated as a doctor's office, so has a kind of built-out, improved driveway as well as a BMP and septic system in the back. The use definition of a group home is shown here on the slide. I won't read it all, but it is important to remember that Fair Housing Act does prohibit discrimination in housing based upon a person's disability, and recovering from an addiction is considered a disability. So this is a proposal to have a group home which helps men struggling with addiction in recovery. So that is, because of the capacity, requires a special use permit in this zoning district. They are proposing to operate with 16 residents, as well as the on-site staff in a group home setting. They will have to make building code changes in order to accommodate that capacity, which are still pending. So there is a recommended condition similar to the one a couple months ago, which establishes that they would need to make those in order to get up to 16, but whatever the lowest number that ends up being based on the building capacity or their septic system would be the total capacity allowed. They are not proposing any exterior changes other than what might be needed for their septic system, or they are kind of doing renovation or improvements on the best management practice, the stormwater facility on site. So other than those things that they would need to do to bring into compliance, no exterior changes proposed. Parking would be within the existing parking lot. Staff evaluated it during a site visit and seems to be adequate. There's no concerns for how it's laid out from fire or any of the kind. The comprehensive plan does have housing goals which support the diversity of housing. So this is providing a valuable resource of housing for those with disabilities in this context. Oops. With that, staff is recommending a series of conditions which are found in the staff report. With those conditions, staff does not anticipate any impacts to the surroundings or on the county, as well as the supporting housing goals, so staff recommends approval. I'm available for any questions.
Does anyone have questions of staff on this case? Thank you very much. I had a conversation with the applicant's attorney earlier this week. Are there any other disclosures? Seeing none, thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing. And our first speaker this evening is Mr. Davis.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Greg Davis with the James City County law firm Kaufman and Knowles. With me tonight is my colleague Benny Zhang. It's our pleasure to represent Evolution House, and our project team, familiar to you since we visited with you a month or two ago, is MAI Homes, owner of the Rochambeau Drive property occupied by my client. The Evolution House team, Evolution House is the applicant. Jeffrey Carver and Ryan Watley are the recovering substance abusers who developed the mission of Evolution House and founded it, and Ryan's here tonight. And as the concept has succeeded and thrived, now Evolution House has professional management, and the CEO, Mr. Eric Rhodes, is here tonight, who has several decades of experience in healthcare management, now leading the way at Evolution House. Hopke Harrison is the architectural firm working with us on building code compliance issues if the special use permit is approved. And of course, my firm is legal counsel. Evolution House fulfills a critical need in our county because it provides a local option. The Evolution House team has educated me that folks who seek inpatient care, what we may refer to as rehab, often go outside the community to find that 30 days or more of inpatient intensive treatment. After that, they're ready for step down, halfway house sort of treatment. We don't have enough of that in our county. And so folks who have left the county to go to Richmond, Northern Virginia, bigger metropolitan areas for that intensive treatment can't make their way back home. And Evolution House fills that need for the housing challenged men. And Evolution House boasts a success rate that's above the competition. And in explaining to you why that success rate is so high, you need to understand why the concept of this house is so important. Picture tells 1,000 words, right? But here's what's going on inside the Evolution House on Rochambeau Drive. The focus, as you can see, is on group spaces, and the group is the key to the success. As we attempt to expand the number of residents to 16 with this application, that means there are more folks to support a resident who's recovering. More people to notice that you're having a bad day or that temptation is calling, throw an arm around you, talk it out with you. More veterans, which is the term Evolution House uses for folks who have been there for weeks or months and who are progressing in their recovery and who can be a great asset to members of the household. More veterans means more support. As a click to some pictures of the bedrooms, I'll mention that this is where the code compliance issues will involve a significant investment by Evolution House to meet fire safety, safe exit ways from the house in the event of fire or emergency. And then here's the good, clean fun going on inside Evolution House. Some indicative pictures taken by management. And in fact, here's Ryan himself, post-recovery, but back at the business he founded, trying to pave the way for those coming behind him. The house itself is here, and Ms. Jakura did a good job of explaining the neighborhood. This is Rochambeau Drive to the south and west, and then Interstate 64 on the other side of the property. Immediately next door is really more of a contractor yard than a residence. Equipment is parked there. A business operates from that property. Evolution House has good relationships with the folks there. They interact often. This aerial shows the Evolution House here in the center of your screen, and then the orange lines are really the point of the slide. This is the existing fence. It's an effective screening fence, and the SUP conditions require either fencing or no trespassing signs on this property line just to protect our neighbors from our residents wandering over onto their property in case that was a concern. We really haven't had a problem there. In February, after my firm was engaged to apply for the special use permit, the first thing we did was invited the neighbors out to the Norge Library for a meeting. We had a good turnout. We had probably 13 or so that we invited, the closest property owners. We filled up the conference room at the library. And we really had a constructive conversation. Sometimes those meetings are hostile. This was more interactive. Some of the concerns that our neighbors expressed. They cited pedestrians walking up and down Rochambeau Road, sometimes at night. We all agree that you couldn't say those were Evolution House residents or not. There was an instance, one neighbor cited of somebody who had wandered up their driveway well off Rochambeau Road. Again, no identification of that as a Evolution House resident, and yet Evolution House immediately updated its residents policy manual. You have a copy of that in your package, and you saw the good neighbor policy that's included in there, big paragraph in the manual now. Trespassing, interfering with the neighbor's, expulsion from Evolution House. Our neighbors wanted to know, who are these residents? And we quickly assured them that there would be no sex offenders, and we asked the staff to include an SUP condition to that effect, and they did. And then We explained the screening process that Evolution House had previously used. Jay Sexton, former area police officer who conducts the screening of residents who have a criminal background. But the neighbors were still concerned, so we came up and proposed, we wrote and proposed the SUP condition you have before you that requires 2 levels of screening, both by licensed professionals, so that if a recovering substance abuser applies who has a felony or violent criminal record, and not many of those folks admitted, but if they were, it would be through an intensive process of screening. There's no drug or alcohol use on the property. Our neighbors didn't know whether this was a fraternity house or a recovery house. Drug testing 3 times a week on a random basis at Evolution House, every week, every resident. Use of drugs or alcohol, grounds for immediate expulsion. And then the neighbors were concerned about whether there was somebody in a position of responsibility on site. There is at Evolution House, and we asked for a special use permit condition to assure that, and as you see from your package, that has been included. A couple of the neighbors are worried about traffic, and we explained that Evolution House residents are really not usually permitted to bring their vehicle. Evolution House buys vans, which take the residents to therapy every day off-site, take them to church, recreational activities, movies, busch gardens, that sort of thing. The residents asked questions about impacts on property values, and we did some research. I asked the staff to include our letter to the residents in your package, which included a study done by a national consulting group that concluded that the presence of a halfway house or home for recovery like this in the neighborhood has no impact on property values. As we considered these comments from the neighbors in crafting our application, it was important that we be able to look at you and the neighbors and say Evolution House will be accountable. And so we agreed with staff on a special use permit condition that requires an annual report to the police chief of any convicted violent felons who have come through the screening process and been admitted to Evolution House. Further, a report to the zoning administrator annually of the daily count of residents. So there's assurance that Evolution House is not exceeding the limit on the number of residents that you have in your package tonight. And the residents in the neighborhood were particularly concerned about having somebody to call. If they found somebody walking in their yard or they were having a problem with noise or anything else, what do? Well, the first thing we did was to send out a letter before even the hearing tonight saying, here's who you call, residents. And the second thing we did was we asked the staff to include a requirement that we provide a contact person. Ms. Parrish and I worked together closely on trying to accommodate that into a workable structure, and that contact person requirement is now in the SUP conditions. There was some talk among the residents of having the county review the SUP periodically or review transfers of Evolution House. There's no plan to sell Evolution House. Ryan would say the goal would be to have this evolve into a nonprofit that serves the county forever. But any sort of restriction or subjecting the operation to a political process periodically would be untenable given the borrowing and leasing commitments that my client will undertake. So, Mr. Chairman, with that introduction to the application, I'll ask the Commission to support this with a recommendation of approval to the Board of Supervisors. My client and I are here and happy to answer questions.
Questions, anyone? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We do have some speaker cards. You each have 5 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address for the record. The first card is Mr. Robert Phalos.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Falace.
Sorry.
That's okay. So I've dealt with drug addiction my entire life since I was a teenager. I tried to join the military and thinking that would give me purpose in life and fix my addiction. And really, I was just running away, and I took myself everywhere I went. That was the real problem. I ended up drinking in the military. I had friends pass away in the military, and that led to me using drugs again. I ended up getting kicked out of the military, unfortunately. The military sent me to rehab. I went to that rehab. I was basically a model person at that rehab. But when I left, I thought I was cured. I thought I had gained all the knowledge I would ever get from addiction, and my life was going to be beautiful from now on. Unfortunately, I didn't continue to work on my addiction, and my addiction continued to work on me. I ended up homeless. I was homeless for 2 years, living out of my car with no hope. And eventually, I found it in myself to go to rehab again. Now, this time when I went to rehab, I was afraid to leave the rehab because I had nowhere to go. I couldn't leave the state of Virginia because I was on probation. And my grandparents happened to live in Williamsburg. So I thought I might as well go around people that I know. I was looking online for a place to go, and I saw the Evolution House. Now, I had no money, no wallet, no license, no bank account. I had nowhere to go, and the Evolution House took me in. I talked to Ryan on the phone, and he had a very similar story from what I had. And when I got to the Evolution House, it was, from day one, it was amazing. My grandfather came and met me there, and I started going to church with him. The Evolution House brought me to meetings, which was something that I was missing the first time I went to rehab. They plugged me in to the network of Alcoholics Anonymous. They made me get a sponsor, and they had other addicts in recovery that were in the houses every day, giving me advice, being a shoulder to lean on, and teach me the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. When it was time for me to leave the Evolution House, they helped me find a place to live. When you're in the Evolution House, I can't even describe it. Brotherhood is just so powerful. You know, all my friends that I've made in the last 2 years of my recovery are people that are involved with the Evolution House. We lean on each other. We hold each other accountable every day. We all know now when there's something wrong to speak up and say something about it. And that all started in the Evolution House. I don't know who I would be if I didn't have them. They taught me how to be a man. They taught me how to hold myself accountable and to do what I say I'm going to do. When I say I'm going to do something, follow through. In 2 weeks, I'll have 2 years of sobriety. I've reconnected with my family. I've paid all my debts off. I'm still a convicted felon, and I still have other than honorable discharge from the military, but that doesn't stop me. The Evolution House has helped me find purpose in myself and lift myself up, not worry about the past, but worry about what I can do for the future. So that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marie Miller?
Good evening. This is my first time in front of you, so I'm happy about that. My name is Marie Miller. I am a lawyer. I am not personally someone who has suffered with addiction, but I have very close family members who have suffered with addiction. And for somebody like me who's very high performing, high achieving, it's a very hard thing to manage and to deal with. And one of the things that I've had to do is I've had to learn a lot about addiction. What I've learned about addiction is it can affect anyone. I think we have visions sometimes about who the people may be who enter Evolution House, and those visions may be completely incorrect because addiction can and does affect everyone. It affects people who are very bright. It affects people who have great jobs. It affects people who have families. And I've seen it damage my family personally. One of the things that has made a difference between members of my family who've been very successful in dealing with addiction and members of my family who haven't has been the support. If you have support, then you can recover. If you have support, then you can overcome. And besides humbling me as somebody who is high achieving and thinks that you could achieve anything if you just put your mind to it, right? I have really had to learn that that's not true. And so Evolution House, I know Ryan personally. I know his mother, who happens to be a counselor there, who is a wonderful, beautiful woman, just giving lots and lots of time and dedication. I met a lot of people who work there and who help out there. And it's just an amazing, amazing process. And I just wanted to share with you that this process and this kind of institution can make the difference so that someone who is struggling with addiction can turn their life around. We just heard a story and it brought me to tears, but it's just one of so many. Because with the right support and with the right help, someone who is struggling can go on to achieve unbelievably fabulous things. I am a trial lawyer. I work for the United States Department of Transportation. I'm a special assistant U.S. attorney for them, and I try cases all over the world involving aviation accidents mostly, but other forms of transportation. I've had several experts who testified for me in some big cases. One case where I just got the biggest conviction and longest sentence and biggest forfeiture of any OIG in the federal government. And one of the witnesses that I used is someone who is sober, someone who was in the military, someone who was a pilot, someone who struggled with addiction and overcame the addiction. And he was open enough to talk to me about it, and I asked him, what made a difference for you? Why are you the success story when there are others who are not? And he said, it's support. I got the help that I needed, and people were there when I needed them to be there. The idea of family and support is just so critical, and that's what Evolution House offers to people. And not everybody, unfortunately, has a loving, caring family or friends or colleagues that could be there to help. So when you don't have those folks, if you have someone else who's willing to come up alongside you and offer you that help, it's an amazing thing. I've met young people who've gone through Evolution House. I've had them to my home to entertain, and they have been amazing. Their stories are amazing. They're spouses, they are parents, and a lot of times they're doctors, lawyers, people in the community who really have just turned their lives around. So I just wanted to share that very personal story with you and hope that you consider that in making whatever decision you do about this amazing, amazing institution. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Cole Sanderson.
Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having me. I'm here as the,
Excuse me, would you state your name and address, please, for the
oh
record?
yes, I apologize. Cole Sanderson, address is 117 Winston Drive. Born and raised in Williamsburg, Virginia. Moved up to Washington, D.C. for a couple years. Now I'm back, but glad to be home. Here to speak in support of this. I'm the owner of the duplex at 4611 Rochambeau Drive on the Broughton track, so right across the street from where this special use permit will take place. I'm 29 years old. When I was 26 years old, I purchased that property for my father. My father is disabled. He's completely blind. So when I was 26 years old, I spent my life savings to buy that house. And it's very important to me that he is safe in that house. And the reason that I purchased that property is because he would struggle to qualify for rental housing on his own. And he had already lived at that property for 7 years at that time. So by him staying there, he could keep everything in order, knowing exactly where everything is since he is blind. But that being said, it is very important to me that he is safe in that environment. But everything that I've heard tonight, I have no concerns at all. And I think that they would be great neighbors. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's it. We have no more speaker cards. Is there anybody else who would like to address the commission on this matter? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Open it for discussion among commissioners. Any?
Well, first off I think the context of this SUP is a little different from the last one we saw. And so one of the things I was concerned about was the impact on the adjoining neighbors. And after going through the documentation that told us about the meeting that they had, the comments, and then more importantly, the replies back to the neighbors so that they got that feedback not only in writing but at the session that they did, really impressed me. Also, I think in response to that meeting and the concerns that were there, I think adding that additional condition where there is a name of somebody there and that they know that and it's going to be renewed and updated, I think was another example of the responsiveness of the applicant to the concerns of the neighborhood. And obviously it was nice to hear somebody that actually lives in the neighborhood to come tell us that they're in support of that. That to me is really important because they're the ones that have to live with us. And of course, the applicant has taken a big step forward to try to make sure that he's inclusive as well as he's upfront with them. So from that point of view, I'm very supportive of this application.
Just go down the line. So, ditto, what you just said. Thanks for taking all my best. Put my notes out of the way, but really, even just for the reasons we heard a month and a half ago, whatever that first one came, it's a very special project. It meets the things I should look for in additions to our county. I am especially struck the second go around with the incorporation of the comments that Evolution House took from these community outreach meetings and actually, not just listening to them, but suggesting or working with the county to put those into the SUP conditions. So for those reasons, it's even easier for me to support it the second time around. So that's where I am.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the board for approval SUP 25-004, 4622 Rochambeau Drive, Evolution House Group Home, with conditions.
With conditions, right. Ms. Istenis, please call the roll.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Mr. Everson.
Aye.
Mr. May.
Aye.
Dr. Allman.
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to the second public hearing, Ordinance 25-0002, amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding data centers. Ms. Parrish, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. At its meeting on March 11th, 2025, the Board of Supervisors adopted an initiating resolution to consider an amendment to the James City County zoning ordinance to address data processing centers, also known as data centers. Data centers are facilities which storage, manage, and process digital data. They're usually large warehouses and that house computer network equipment, systems, servers, appliances, and other components related to the operation of digital data. As technology evolves with artificial intelligence or generative AI, the demand of storage is very heightened. Examples of AI that uses large amount of data are applications such as ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Apple Intelligent, and Microsoft Copilot. Data centers are not defined currently in the ordinance and are permitted by right in M1, M2, mixed use, and EO districts. Additionally, RT, it is permitted by right, but only as an accessory use. Data centers produce a variety of impacts, both positive and negative. Positive includes, but are not limited to, additional tax revenue, low traffic generation, and known demand on schools. Positive impacts that were stated by the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission included data centers provide positive benefits for the Virginia economy, mostly because of the industry's substantial capital investment. Data centers employ fewer employees than some other industries, but data centers' jobs tend to be high-paying. And localities with data centers can collect substantial tax revenues from the industry, primarily from business, personal property, and real property taxes. Negative negative impacts include, but are not limited to, visual, as buildings are often large and in generic type construction. Energy consumption, many present additional financial risks to electric utilities and their customers because just of the sheer size of the industry's demand. Water consumption, many data centers use water-based cooling systems to keep servers and equipment cool while in operation. Air quality, rely on large diesel fuel generators which emit air pollutants. Noise, buzzing and humming noises, which generally is from the cooling systems on top, which are from the fans and chillers. Electrical transmission lines and generators and other equipment produce that noise. Waste, discarded old servers, storage devices, network switches, etc., that contain hazardous materials such as lead, mercury, and other chemicals. Data center regulations vary among localities, from creating an overlay district to allow them by right or by a special use permit or special exception. Established performance standards may be included in ordinances. Other localities have or are in the process of creating data center policies to address siting criteria, site design, building design, and utilities. There are approximately 300 data centers scattered across Loudoun County, Fairfax County, and Prince William County, which is also known as Data Center Alley. Staff presented materials to the Policy Committee on its June 12, 2025 meeting, which included 1, defining data center, 2, remove data processing center as a permitted use out of all zoning districts, considering adding data centers as a permitted use only when adhering to certain criteria and performance standards with performance standards in the M2 General Zoning District, and 4, consideration of adding data centers as a specially permitted use in the EO District. The Policy Committee discussed concerns that data centers serve large corporations located elsewhere and not directly to the local community, unknown electrical consumption, and demands on Dominion Energy, and would encourage data centers to incorporate edge computing, which would bring data processing centers and storage closer to where it's needed. After discussion, the Policy Committee voted 4-1 to recommend the following. Add the new definition as you see on your screen here. Remove data centers or data processing centers from M1, M2, MU, and EO as a commercial use. Proposed changes would be add data center as a specially permitted use and as an industrial use in the M2 and EO. And then there was a policy recommendation that was recommending to the Board of Supervisors to develop or to direct staff to develop a comprehensive board policy similar to Solar's for data centers to identify best practices when reviewing data centers when they come forward with a special use permit. Those draft policy conditions would include size, setbacks, electrical demands, water source and demands, noise, fencing, building demands, screening, energy management plan, storage, and equipment. I put an asterisk near the decommissioning plan. I spoke with the county attorney's office, and the Code of Virginia only grants the authority to require a decommissioning plan for solar facilities. So a decommissioning plan for a data center at this time would not be permitted. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the attached ordinance that was provided in your packet, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions?
There was some email exchanges, and I think I'm confused about our discussion on EO. And as I recall, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was that you made the comment that EO designation is a land use comp plan type thing and not a zoning district itself. Did I understand that correctly?
Actually, both. There is an economic opportunity zoning district, and there's also an economic opportunity comprehensive plan district. The only area that's zone EO or economic development is up at the Hazelwood property. Anything else that's been designated as economic opportunity on the comprehensive plan would have to go through a rezoning in order to be that zoning district.
Okay, so I now understand the Hazelwood portion where it's zoned that way as opposed to the comp plan piece. And then I think my other comment for clarification was that the Taylor Farm EO, which is at the Anderson Corner piece there to the left, that's an EO by comp plan, but it also has a description of how it should be used. And so does that alter, are we saying that the Anderson Taylor Farm is an EO zoning? No.
No, that's only a comprehensive land future use
Right.
designation.
Which would have to go through the
That's
process. So
correct.
it would be incorrect for me to say that we'd have to have an SUP for the use of the Taylor Farm as a data center.
Correct. So, yeah, any type of the Taylor farm would have to go through a rezoning, and then you have master plans and use and so forth. So if for some reason they wanted to incorporate a data center, then a special use permit would be on top of that as well.
And then there was some discussion in my own mind about the M2, which right now, the way that it's proposed and what we discussed in the policy committee would be an SUP. Could you bring up the graphics for the M2 so that I make sure that I understand the location and where it is?
Those maps that I presented.
So the first one, if I recall, is the Hankin Industrial Park up by Tohanna.
Yes, this is the Hankin Industrial Park here. And the darker purple is M2.
Okay, and to the right is Westminster.
Westminster is further down.
So what is
Over
this one
here, I
right here?
think
To the right?
is, Toanna Middle School is right here.
No, to the right of the Hankins,
All those
the
homes.
east.
Oh, this is Mirror Lakes,
Okay, it's Mirror Lakes, not Westminster.
correct.
I thought there was a section of Westminster that was part of that because there's a road that coming in from Rochambeau. But the point is it's a mature, stable neighborhood, right?
Right.
And then there's the school up above there on the other side of the Massey property that's in green, that's zoned limited residential. It's A1, but it's
Right.
limited residential,
Well, it's A1 until it's rezoned.
right?
Yeah.
But in the comp plan, it's limited residential or low level. And then, of course, we've got the Tohanna. And so I guess in my mind this is one of the reasons why I objected to putting the MU as an SUP, because we're essentially sticking a finger in the residents' eyes around there about putting a data center for it. But then again, it is an SUP for it. Can you bring up the other ones, the other two?
Let me go back. This was the Hazelwood property for the EO,
Right.
just for, and then this is near the Williamsburg Pottery. It's a small piece of M2.
Where is the,
Here's the pottery here. This is the villages at Westminster here, I think,
where's the strip mall?
right here. These two buildings right there. Is the pottery. Oh, and then the strip mall, York County is down here. Lightfoot Market.
So the purple area, which is MU, is on the border of York County,
Yes.
and it is in that area. Okay, I just
Yes.
wanted to make sure that I had some correct
Reference.
understanding of where that was. And then the last one is Kings Mill,
Well, there's a little piece beside the Anheuser-Busch.
right?
That's adjacent. I believe Escalante owns that with Kings Mill.
I'm sorry, and then the two residential areas to the left and the bottom are all Kings Mill?
Yes.
Okay,
And then this is the Grove area where
Right.
BASF and so forth
Yep.
is.
I think those are I wanted to make sure that I did have the M2 correct, and I got the EO straight for it. And thank you.
Dr. Allman?
Just a quick question. I did send you an email about it, but I thought it would be helpful to ask the question in the public forum as well. I just would like a bit of clarification on if our recommendation to the Board of Supervisors is to go away and draft a policy, and thank you, by the way, for putting together the policy points coming out of the policy committee meeting that we had. What would that policy have to apply to? Would it only apply to SUPs, or would it apply if there were any districts where we designated by right a data center could be built?
If the committee felt that they wanted a by right option with certain standards, if it met, then those standards would have to be incorporated into the zoning ordinance. Then they would have to meet those standards, and then they could do a site plan and so forth. They would not have to be a legislative action. The policy, the board would have to direct staff to say, okay, we would also like to have a policy that will guide us when we're reviewing special use permit cases for data centers. That policy can incorporate some or all of that suggested list. Once the board, or should the board direct staff to do that policy, we will work with our county attorney's office to make sure all the conditions are appropriate for the policy, bring that back, I believe, through the policy committee, planning commission, and back to the board. Does
Okay.
that
Yeah,
help?
that's very clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the only by right option would be those standards that I had presented at the policy committee meeting. You know, that list would need to be incorporated into the zoning ordinance. And at that point, the policy committee did not vote for that option. They only voted for a special use permit in two zoning districts, and then request that the board direct staff to compile a policy and bring back.
Sorry and that is why we don't see those standards in this version of the ordinance that we've seen, because we went for the SUP option in the policy committee meeting. Okay,
Yes,
great.
got it.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Just a couple of things. First of all, thank you, and thank the Board of Supervisors. See, the county, I think, has been very vulnerable over these past couple of years, having 4 by right districts for these data centers. And so thanks for getting on top of this. I think it's very important work that you do. If this BAS Greenmount district were to have an application for a data center, would Fort Eustis have to get involved in that decision?
I believe
It's-
that they would be, we would be required to send them a notification.
Right, yeah, that's an overlay or something like that, I thought so. The definition does not include the establishment of a facility used to mine cryptocurrency. Should we have something like that in there? That's also a big, it's a very similar facility as I understand it.
It is a similar facility, but excluding it out of the definition, which means it would not be permitted at all.
Oh, okay, you're right, got it. So if we vote to recommend approval of the zoning ordinance amendment that we have in our packet here, verbatim, that would include SUPs, would include the economic opportunity zone at Hazelwood and the 4 M2s, then if we wanted to incorporate this best practice list that you included, that would go into a policy.
Yes,
I
you would
know Dr. Ullman kind of asked the same
Sure.
question, but I'm a little thick,
Yes.
so I just want to make sure I understood it.
Because those conditions are not being incorporated into the zoning ordinance, then the recommendation to the Board of Supervisors would be to direct staff to develop policies similar to the solar facilities.
Gotcha. And if we decided, contrary to our decision on the policy committee, to make these districts by right, we could attach this list as performance standards.
What I would suggest, if there is an idea of wanting to go back and do a by right option, would be to defer it and allow staff to get with the attorney's office and come back forward with what conditions could be incorporated into the zoning ordinance. And then you could review and vote on it in August.
Would you have to go back, would we have to come back if I were successful in convincing my colleagues to do away with the economic opportunity zone district?
No. If you wanted to just say special use permit in M1 period,
M2.
or M2, excuse me, and do away with the economic, no, it would not have to go forth. I mean, it would be a recommendation just to,
It would be this ordinance amendment that you have here
Minus the
with
EO.
one little change to it.
Correct.
Okay, great.
yes.
And if we wanted to, oh, never mind, I answered my own question. That's it for me. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Where are we here? Hold on. We have no speaker cards. Would anybody like to address the commission on this matter? Actually, I didn't. No, I beg your pardon. Thank you. We'll open the public hearing. I have no speaker cards. Anybody care to address the commission? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And discussions?
Well, I'll start it off. I kind of feel like we're at the same place we were with solar a number of years ago for it. And it's funny, there was an article not too long ago about HB 1601, which was done by the Prince William guys, which is a big data center thing, you know, that localities are making up the rules as they go along for it. And as we went through the discussion and then the email exchanges on other questions for it in terms of policy versus putting it into an ordinance, and then when we got the other document that Christie sent out to us the other day from Sally Kilgore or whatever, who happens to be a local resident who has followed all of this, she brought up some things in my mind that made sense that I would like to see as conditions if we go back that route for the staff. It's back to this thing, I don't know what I don't know, because we're kind of making this thing up as we're going along for it. And so I was really comfortable with the suggestion of the conditions because over time that's going to adjust for it. But it allows us then to say, okay, M2 with conditions, and if you don't meet the conditions, like the water as an example for it, on it, well, okay, you know, no check in the block because you can't say yes to the M2 down here at the BSAF and say no to the other M2s. That doesn't make any sense. But if we go the ordinance level, I'm kind of stuck with no way to be able to evaluate it with some of the things. So some of the items additional items that I thought that came up that I think are worth considering is the decommissioning. And so one of the comments that when we took a look at the video, which if you get a chance, sending it to the other members, I think would be helpful. You walk into a data center and the guy says, oh, you know, it's a 20-foot high ceiling, right? And what he then says is, well, but it's going to be 3 feet shorter because there's a false floor. Well, guess what's underneath that false floor? It's all the cabling that connects all of the servers together. And having built one of those things, that's a bear to get rid of. And right now, without a decommissioning type thing, with all the computers that are in there, the glass, you know, and all the HVAC, that would be criminal, you know, not to be able to do something about that or at least have it considered. And we may not be able to do it in an ordinance, but we certainly would able to have one of those things for a condition that you could check off the block, does it meet this thing? So the height argument that you brought up, I thought made sense in terms of it doesn't count the HVAC thing. And if you take a look at that video, it really is kind of amazing to see how big these things are.
I address the height?
Sure.
Because I went back in the zoning ordinance of M1 and M2 and EO. And actually, the height of the buildings does consider anything that's on the roof, including electrical or HVAC.
Good.
They would have to get a height waiver only to a certain amount if they wanted to go over that 60-foot or whatever that height requirement is. So I just wanted to.
No, that's great. The other one that I liked in there was the sound noise. And it isn't that, I don't think that the buffering and the setback and those things weren't, and the fact that generators don't necessarily run all the time, right? It's just because of shortage. But her point was, and I remember this from the Kingsmill Escalon thing when they were going to build it where the brewery and the houses, is a baseline. And then after it's built, what is it to attenuate it? Because I think the point is you may get more noise from traffic on a road than you would necessarily from the data center if it's buffered and all that sort of setbacks were set in there. But I thought that was kind of a nice, let's make sure, because I don't think it should happen, but if the Anheuser-Busch goes away and then you decide that, the Kingsmill guys ought to have it, or for the Mirror Lakes as an example on that. So it's some of the ideas that I thought she had in there that were worth while considering for it. I really like this discussion that we've been going back and forth on. What is the economic benefit other than, right? And it's been clear to me in just quickly taking a look at the board agenda where we're going to put a solar farm over the Jolly Pond dump, which I think is a great idea, right? But the county's going to realize about $1,000 an acre, right? That to me is an economic benefit that is something that you can count on. I think there's other ways, and I think you've done a great job of looking at some language that you've seen from Nevada on that could be incorporated. But I really think that idea is worthwhile. And all of what I'm talking about is not to say no to a data center, because I think it's something that's going to happen, and if we can be done responsibly and in the right location, then we ought to at least look at the opportunity for it that it'll provide to the county. So those are all the things that I'm thinking about. So, I am very supportive of going back to the board and saying we think we ought to try a policy, and here are some of the things that we've been talking about in that policy that we wouldn't necessarily be able to incorporate. Also say that it's like our solar farm, we're kind of still figuring it out, and especially at the state level, they haven't figured it out yet. And I remember sitting in a conference of high growth counties where the gal from Prince William asked, how about some guidance on this? And they didn't have it. And so I'd like to be able to give us a chance to look at the policy type thing and just take a step forward in the direction of an ordinance, but make that the first step. So that's where I am.
Dr. Ullman?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I think that's broadly what you described, Mr. Polster, is broadly where I am. I will admit I've gone kind of back and forth on what the best approach has been. Whether to incorporate performance standards into an ordinance, whether this is the right time to do that, or whether the right thing to do is to approach it from the policy angle with SUPs. I think at the end of the day, the way I'm thinking about this is, I think there should be a set of standards that apply to data centers. There's plenty of evidence from other counties in the state, as well as other places in the country and the world, where to show that data centers have some negative externalities that could be mitigated with some smart policy decisions. But we don't necessarily know what the best array of policy decisions are, because we are kind of dealing with this in a whack-a-mole sort of fashion as it comes up. Every county is trying to figure out what can we do. And so that kind of argues for a mechanism that's kind of flexible, that allows us to evaluate more or less on a case-by-case basis and to evolve the policy as we do some learning from what happens when data centers want to site in our localities. And so that's really where I'm coming from, and kind of in appreciating the draft policy language, really thinking that taking this to the Board of Supervisors and having them think through it could be a really good call. And also I'll add that, something I was advocating for a lot in the policy committee meeting was doing this thinking on how, if a data center located here in James City County, it could serve the local community, provide that additional economic development benefit that you mentioned, Mr. Polster, in your remarks just now. I think that there is a pattern in the sense that data centers often serve global clients, as they should, and that's always going to be the vast majority of their business. But there's a huge opportunity when a data center with that level of compute and that kind of potential, really, for creating an innovation ecosystem sites in a locality to provide some really nice positive externalities to that locality, and a kind of a smart county level policy could help kind of incentivize that. I would also add, this shouldn't be a huge burden on data centers, because a lot of developers actually do this anyway. They offer incentives to localities, but this is on a purely kind of voluntary basis. And so I think there's an opportunity here to kind of incorporate something into a draft policy that encourages that local investment. So to that end, I did kind of circulate around to a few of you some possible language, which I kind of loosely paraphrased from a Nevada law. So that was a state level law, but I think it could work at the county level. And that language would add kind of an additional bullet point to the draft policy on community benefit in particular. And I'll just go ahead and read out what what I jotted down, but this can obviously change, and it's just a suggestion at this point. But the community benefit language would say something along the lines of developers should enter into a community benefit agreement with the county that outlines specific local economic development commitments and performance standards that demonstrate a commitment to local vitality, such as partnerships with local research, training, or education institutions, or supporting local education, innovation, or digital inclusion initiatives. So make some suggestions, doesn't say you have to exclusively provide those kinds of benefits, but in the case that a developer came to develop in James City County and had to, present that plan to the Planning Commission, to the Board of Supervisors, would have to make a proposal for what the community benefit would be. And on a case-by-case basis, we would be able to evaluate that. So that would be my suggestion and kind of where I stand at the moment.
Mr. Chairman, I'd say a few things. So I know as I've reviewed all this material and all, and I've heard discussions of whether it is by right or through an SUP. And the more I've looked into it, I certainly see where an SUP would be the way to go. I wouldn't support a by right path because there are a lot of well-established neighborhoods in these areas in M2 and in EO that could be negatively impacted by these. And that comprehensive JLARC study really does show noise and other things like that, and things that have happened up in Prince William and other counties, how that could be a negative impact to those existing homes that are in close proximity to those. So I think that SUP process would be necessary to try to mitigate those in the event that that happens.
Everson.
I think that the M2 should be by right. Because when you take down here at the BASF, James River, Greenmont area, all those businesses, all that land comes in, and they have all these requirements that'd be in the ordinance. And our staff is, in my view, fully competent enough to be able to go down and determine whether or not they meet all the standards. Now, in terms of the other M2 across the county, the main thing here is on water source demands. Data centers shall be connected to a public water system. I would like to, I would change the next sentence. The use of public or private wells for water supply is prohibited. In all the other M2 in James City County, they're on groundwater, the Service Authority. This area is on Newport News surface water. So that if none of the other M2 can meet any of these, can't meet all of these bullet points, if you will, and the water being the biggest one. On the electrical issue, this area right here is right in the area where the transmission lines have come across the James River, and there's a major substation in this area, which would mitigate the issue that happened out in Norge, for example, with the industrial solar facility at Farmville Estates, where they came in and whacked all the Leland cypress trees and put those huge power lines up. Here, they're right near the substation, so that issue is mitigated because I know that came up in the policy committee. The thing is, if you have a proposal for M2 down in the eastern end of the county, and they make all these requirements here, what is the point of coming to this commission or to the Board of Supervisors if they've met all these requirements? And this is the area of the county where there is no houses. So the noise issue, particularly the BAS property, which is not a Superfund site, I checked that. And you put them down here, the noise issue kind of goes away because it didn't go away, but it doesn't impact like it would up at the Hankins property. But the Hankins property wouldn't qualify because the water issue. I think we need to make sure that it comes from surface water because they are large water users. Now, I know that some technology right now with the closed loop that they're using would reduce the amount of water, but they still use a lot of water. And it just seems to me that in M2, since no other M2 land in James City County will have surface water except this area. So therefore, I think that M2 should be by right, because I can tell you, I think our staff is more competent to be able to determine whether all these conditions are met than any of us here, or even at the board level, with all due respect to the 5 up there. And that's why I think it should be, M2 should be by right.
So your recommendation then is to go back to the policy committee and rework this?
Rework it and put it as an ordinance. I think it should be an ordinance, because I have for many years, I've had this position that we should have predictability in land use. It's, when you have stuff like this, people can get hysterical. And down here, there's nobody who's impacted. There's no residential neighborhoods down here that are going to be negatively impacted by this. And, and that's the only part of the county that can meet all these recommendations. It's the water's the key one. That's why if it's in the ordinance, it's to the use of private or public wells. Make sure it's clear that they can't hook into the service authority with groundwater.
Dr. Ullman?
Yeah, thanks. I'm actually just going to echo your question, Mr. Haldeman, because I think it's kind of an important point here as we determine what the best path forward is. As I understand it, Mr. Everson, what you would like to do is to kind of take the language from what is now in the draft policy, so it's those bullet points, right? Potentially, ideally, plus your addition on water and my addition on community benefit, and put it in the ordinance so that then it, in a by right case, it would go through staff, which would require it to go back to staff for legal evaluation, then back to the policy committee. I just want to make sure I understand what the steps would be under
If it goes
that.
to an ordinance, obviously it's going to have to go back to staff.
Yeah.
Put it in ordinance form, I guess go back to the policy committee, and then come back here in August. We got time because they wanted September. But it seems to me, that this is the most reasonable way to handle this issue on M2. And we can discuss EO. I forgot who made I guess you made the point, Mr. Haldeman. I take your point on EO, because on EO, the special use permit, and Mr. Polster brought up the Taylor track, if that ever comes rezoning with the neighborhood across the street, I'd be very skeptical of having a data center there. The same with in Hazelwood. I'd be very skeptical up there, because heck, you live right near there, Mr. May. And the only other one, I guess, would be Hill Pleasant Farm. And I don't think the topography there works.
There are several economic opportunity designations that could be rezoned into an economic opportunity district with the support of the comprehensive plan, because they've designated that way. And so it's not just the Hazelwood, there's more than one.
All right, Hill Pleasant Farm, the Taylor property, and now, of course, Hazelwood. Those are the only 3, right?
On Croker Road? Maybe not, I don't know. Would you please bring up the zoning map again?
I thought we went over this, there's only 3.
No, just the zoning map. No, I know, it's just the zoning map, the one you had up earlier. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. The economic opportunity zone is the dark green in the far northern part of the county. And that's the only economic opportunity zoning district right now. And
Right, okay.
and I don't like the idea of putting a data center in there, and I don't know why I didn't bring it up in the policy committee. My bad. But it does have residential housing around it. It's just not really that conducive to the intent of economic opportunity. And if we decide to approve this zoning ordinance tonight, with the idea of going back and creating a policy to go with it, I would like to remove the economic opportunity zone and just have it for M2, that's all. Anyway, that's,
As it stands now, I agree with you on that point. As it is now on this policy, none of it in EO would qualify because of water. I mean, that would be, I mean, if they did everything else here, including having their electrical connection be reasonable, if you will, not like they did down Farmville Road, they wouldn't meet the water. And to me,
if that's the case, there's no reason not to take it out. Right?
but that's the point. Yeah,
Or the technology changes and you don't have that problem. And then you end up with a data center where you don't want it, for the very reasons we've all been talking about, which is you don't know what you don't know. I mean, to make an assumption that water is going to be the only limiting factor is a fallacy. There's no certainty.
And remember, a policy is a policy. An
Right.
ordinance is a shall
Right.
do these things.
That's my
A
point.
policy can be changed, or the board could choose not to follow said policy.
Exactly. So that the latitude and the good sense of folks who are responsible to the community make those decisions.
my point is I prefer ordinances is as predictable.
I
not
understand,
capricious.
I understand that completely. I'm just trying to make sure that all the arguments in the discussion are clearly there as we start to proceed. I think Steve had something to say.
What I was going to put out was, and I will put my own bias with this, but my daughter lived in the Broadlands, which is a section up in Loudoun County, and I would drive up there often for a period of about 5 years. And it's insane to see what those data centers did to that section of Loudoun County. You absolutely hear buzzing as you drive. If you're going between Dulles Airport to townhouse land, I mean, the Broadlands is this massive community, good schools, high incomes, educated people that all let this thing happen around them. That for me, it's paramount that we don't delay, that we, as much as we can, move to get ahead of data centers wherever they go. I'm with Mr. May, and that I just feel, as I saw it there, you don't know what's coming. And the SUP process to me allows, the staff still does all the background work, but they work with representatives of the community to say, well, here's how people feel this year or last year, or looking out if we know more. And so where I am is I'm comfortable with the package. So I'll be voting to support this.
economic
I agree with you, Mr. Haldeman, that I would like to see the economic opportunity out of that myself. I would agree with that.
I would actually like to have the southeastern portion of BASF and the James River District and so forth be an attractive location for data centers. I don't want to scare data centers away from all of James City County, because I can be bought, you know, they really are an attractive revenue source. They don't have traffic, they don't have school kids and everything else. It's a major fiscal benefit to the county to have it. And I want an investor to look at this tract and say, this is perfect, I want to build it here. And whether or not we have an SUP or by right with these performance standards, look at them and say, yeah, I can meet these, and let's move forward with this. That's where I want us to be. And so I have to think that through, I guess.
Can we maybe come to some consensus on a straw vote on some issues? I think there's a consensus on the Hazelwood EO that we don't want that in there. I mean, is that pretty much everybody?
I would agree with that.
So anything that we go back to the board with in that regard would make that statement.
Just going to be M2, that's
Right.
all, just M2.
Right, so it just, I think there's that consensus. Is there potentially any consensus to a policy in conjunction with saying that what those districts are? In other words, to go back to is the recommendation number that the policy committee approved, okay? I'm sorry, I want to go to the memorandum and make sure that I'm absolutely correct on that I highlighted. There were 4 points that came out of the meeting, and the one that I'm talking about is the fourth one. Recommend that the Board of Supervisors direct staff to develop a comprehensive board policy for the data center facilities to identify best practices in regard to policies and regulations. Is there a consensus about doing something like that?
Only if we're not going to do by right. correct?
Right.
Yeah. So the consensus is ordinance for an SUP without the economic opportunity, period, full stop. And secondly, to recommend a policy to guide the SUP process.
Right. I mean, I think that's where, I'm just trying to see if there's a consensus. I
I'm
mean,
not
I've heard all the arguments, but I'm just trying to feel where we are so we can go forward. And I'm not sure about where we are, so that's why I'm asking for the straw poll.
I would support by right on them too.
So can I kind of just recap? So what's on the table is that everybody is in consensus that EO it's not appropriate use for an SUP for a data center in EO. Got that. So based on what I'm hearing from Mr. Everson, and I'm gonna try to say that he would prefer to defer this action, be able to take it back to the policy, let staff work with the attorney's office from that list and come up with what can be in an ordinance for the southern part of the M1 only because of surface water. Meaning that if it can meet these standards, including surface water, then it would go through a by right option. Okay? Okay. And then the other option would be to move forward with M2 special use permit no matter where, and have the board direct staff to complete the policy.
Accept the definitions.
Yeah, yes, and accept the definitions, that's correct.
Yep, that's where I am.
So that sounds like those are the two options, was what I'm hearing.
Let's, does anybody else have anything to add? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Polster.
I make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the board on the Z2400 amendment to zoning ordinance regarding data centers, that the commission recommend that we add the new definitions for data centers, section 24-2 definition. We limit the data centers to M2 only, and that we recommend that with an SUP, when we recommend that the Board of Supervisors direct staff to develop a comprehensive board policy for data center facilities to identify best practices with regard to policy and regulations.
Stennis, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Everson?
No.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Dr. Allman?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Christie, thank you
thank
very,
you,
very much. This is
Phil.
a difficult issue. It really is. And thank you for all the work.
Appreciate it.
Planning Commission considerations. Mr. Stocking rates.
I hope you all have had an opportunity to see the proposed resolution that we would go back to the board with. I started this as a member of the Stormwater Advisory Group back in 2018. And at the time, we were concerned about E. coli bacteria, specifically in Ware Creek and Diaskin at both the mouth of the York and of the Chickahominy. which is documented. And the county has to do something about that at some point. And so the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District came to us and said, we'd like to do a study to look at the stockage rate. And oh, by the way, we've been participating in the state stocking rate, equine rate from the Department of Agriculture, and they laughed at us when we told them that was the rate of 7 to 1 acre for a variety of reasons. The board agreed and actually gave the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District money to go and do the survey. And so we expanded it to do most of the Diaskin, especially on the Forge Road on the one side of it. And you saw the report that came back with the recommendations, which was 219. As we went through the comp plan for 2045, we had a listening group from the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation. They gave us a briefing with the proposals, which you've also seen. And the recommendation that we ended up putting into the comprehensive plan actually put a strategy and goal piece that I put in there that said, hey, we probably ought to take a look at this thing. I don't know that we need a policy, but I'm pretty sure that an ordinance that specifies and tells you 1 or 2 horses is probably appropriate for it. What's been interesting is over that period of time, the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District also do consulting work with people along Forge Road and have used this document as a standard to be able to help out, and it's been recognized at state-wide level. I know it's about 6 or 8 years or whatever it is since we started this thing, but you know, between the staff and the other things we've been doing, we just haven't had a chance to be able to get to this. And so in talking with Mr. Holt and asking what his workload looked like, he said I could either propose it from the Planning Commission or from the board. And so I wrote up one for the Planning Commission to make a resolution to go to the board for a stocking rate. I think it makes sense. You've seen the material. I'd be more than welcome to answer any of your questions if you have any of you.
I learned everything I know about stocking rates from reading your report. And it does make sense to look into it. So to me, it does. I'm sorry. Mr. Matt.
Is there any current farms that this would impact that has X number of horses on there, where if this changes, they would have to reduce their herd size?
Yes, as a matter of fact, in terms of the numbers, it wouldn't impact stables, okay? Which is one of the things that I did in my research to try to determine, you know, what those rates are, where they were exactly. And so those operations are excluded from it currently. And my proposal would be, as we go through the policy, that we continue to do that. What's interesting, though, and I think in the one presentation is, and in the study, is both owners of stables and of owners were talking about the problem of getting enough forage to feed their animals for it. And one of the things that the SPAC ended up doing was the horse stable out on Tower Ridge. I'm sorry, I can't even think of it.
Fire Tower Road?
Yeah, Fire Tower Road, but that place out there that does not only stabling of horses, but it does physical therapy type thing with horses. We actually went out there and took a look at their facility and looked at some of the practices that they put in place. And one of the things that was interesting to me is that they are composting and selling all the manure, okay? And they have a steady customer for that to get rid of it. But then in the issue of getting exercise for the horses in the wintertime is that you end up beating up the soil so bad that
If I might, all of that stuff all of those elements would come if we decide to look at this.
Right, I'm sorry.
But
I don't mean to-
the question before the floor now is simply,
sorry.
should we look at this?
Right.
That's all. And then
I
all
just
of
wanted to
these,
say there were some good practices that are available out there, and so.
Dream catchers.
Right,
Dream catchers.
right. Dream catchers, that's
I think of
exactly,
that.
sorry.
that's okay. Anybody here opposed to looking at it?
I would certainly support.
Seeing none, may I please have a motion to consider possible amendments to Chapter 24 zoning for definitions, special regulations, and the use lists of the A1 General Agricultural District and the R8 Rural Residential District to address equine stocking rates.
So moved.
Further discussion?
Very well.
Voice vote?
Long second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Everson?
Aye.
Mr. May?
Aye.
Dr. Allman?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Planning Director's report?
I do not have anything additional to add.
Great, thank you. Commission discussion and requests. The BOS coverage for July 8th is Mr. Rogers
And Ms. Parrish,
and Ms. Parrish.
work that together, we got it.
The Policy Committee for this month has been canceled. The Development Review Committee is on standby. We're not sure yet, so keep that date open. And that's it for me. Anybody else for the good of the cause? Consider a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks for learning.